Hey guys, it's Dobbo here. Now, the NRL season might be over, but that doesn't mean the fun can't stop with Ladbrokes. Now, our great friends at Ladbrokes, you go and download the Ladbrokes app. You can join Mates Mode. We'll be having a little flutter over the Spring Carnival, and also with the Ashes series coming up, go and join our pot inside ball and just watch this space. But if not, just get on, download the Ladbrokes app and join it today. I absolutely love Ladbrokes. I get on, I have a little flutter most weeks. Sometimes you go well, sometimes you even go better when you're with the Rainmaker. But hey, go and join it today. Yeah, go and join it today. Enjoy it. We've got lots more coming on. Go to the little bullseye where it says more, then you hit Mates Mode, then you go inside ball, join the revolution.
Okay, we've got a really special podcast for you this morning on the Inside Ball. We're going back in time, a step back in time for all you Broncos fans. I know there's thousands of you out there. We've got two of the original owners of the Broncos and one of the original accountants, or...
That'll do. Director. Was he a director, Baz? Did we ever... No, we didn't. I thought we were smarter than that.
Okay, so we've got three very smart men here in the room, right, that'll take us back in time and let us know and talk us through how the Broncos were originally, first of all, started and the initial... Well, how long were you guys involved for, Barry?
Well, we were involved, in running the club?
Yeah.
Well, we started in early 87, putting in our franchise. It was called the Miranda franchise, and we pitched against about 5 others. And there was a lot of arm wrestling as to who was going to get the franchise. Bobby Bax, who was the famous coach and ran the SP bookie in Brisbane, had us 100-1. So we weren't travelling too well at that stage.
Right, so take it. How did it all start? Did the New South Wales Rugby League in the time, in about 86, were asking for tenders for a new franchise?
Well, 86. Look, I think in hindsight it was a bit of a closed shop, because there was just a subtle ad in the Courier Mail about expressions of interest to put a team. I mean, you know, you can imagine today when the NRL want to do something, it's front page. But there was this small little ad, and I saw it. And Barry and I had been talking about this over many years, and I rang him. I said, Baz, have a look at this. You know, expressions of interest. So it's all started from that, from a simple ad in the paper, saying that the league was going to be expanded.
Right. So what was your background at the time, Steve? What were you doing?
Well, I'd worked.
You're a former player, of course.
Yeah, former player. But I'd worked at the Queensland Rugby League. I was a marketing manager,
right,
working under the famous Ronnie McAuliffe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
you had a good relationship with Ron?
I had more arguments and more disagreements with Ronnie than you'd want to, but I loved him. He was a guy that, we would have an argument that afternoon or that night. He'd come in the next morning and he would, if he was wrong, he would apologise.
Right.
But he was an interesting guy, because he ran the Queensland Rugby League like a gerrymander.
Right.
You had the North Queensland, the Toowoomba's, all of the, and he would sort of say to them that, there's a kangaroo tour coming up, we need a manager. So, I'm looking for you, I'm looking at you, I'm looking at you, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, okay.
And but he was an interesting guy.
Righto. So you pitched a model together.
We put in our franchise. We put in ours as an offer. The first thing I said to Steve is, we've got to get Gary Balkin. Gary Balkin, by that stage, you've got to understand, no one was going to local rugby league.
Right, in the BRL, Brisbane Rugby League.
Brisbane Rugby League. If anything, they were going to the Reds to watch rugby union, or...
Well, we'll just cut that bit out, Barry. We know what the Reds are.
Well, I mean, at that stage, rugby league was not seen as an attractive game.
Sport.
But we knew it was, because we'd seen sport around the world.
And your background was marketing as well?
Well, no, my background was an academic, but I had been involved in international sports. World Series cricket, I was involved in that.
Okay.
And I was involved in the tour to South Africa in the 1980s. So I'd been, and of course our company with Wayne Reid, who was the president of the Lawn Tennis Association, we ran the Australian Tennis Open. We also ran Davis Cup. So I'd go over to Wimbledon and buy tennis players and bring them back here.
Yeah.
So I was involved in the international side of it. had a mate, Randy Short, whose father was the attorney for the Chicago Bears. So when I'd fly over to Wimbledon, I'd stop in at Tucson, Arizona, and then spend time with him. So I got to know a fair bit about American sport.
Yep.
And that allowed us then to think, well, why isn't rugby league going in the same direction? Because as a contact sport, it has greater virtues than any other contact sport because it's got continuity.
Yep. Right. So there was two other gentlemen involved. Gary
Balkin, because Gary...
who was mixed up with South, and he was a publican.
He was a publican, had the hotel, Melbourne Hotel.
Yep.
He sponsored Souths. He looked after country rugby league so that he had access to many personnel who were going to be voting on which franchise got this.
Right.
I had a contact in the New South Wales Rugby League, Graham Lovett, who was the president of Slazenger's, and he ran the Hordern Pavilion tennis. So when we bought tennis players, we'd have them in Melbourne and Sydney and Brisbane, and then the Hordern Pavilion. So we shared the tennis players because it was the only professional sport in the 70s and 80s. But Graham was then brought on to the New South Wales Rugby League. So I could get the gossip out of the New South Wales Rugby League. Gary got the gossip out of Queensland. And we built up a fairly formidable understanding of who was popular and who wasn't.
Right. And how does Paul Morgan get involved?
Paul came in because I said to the three, or the other two, I said, listen, we've got to get out of this at some stage. And Paul's a stockbroker, and we've been involved with Paul for 20 years at University Cricket and with Sandy and the whole Paul Morgan family was very close to us anyway. And we used to be, Paul had that little shop front in Piccadilly Arcade, if you remember, and we used to buy shares to keep him alive, really, or to help him. And at that stage, we needed to float. By that stage, Morgans were developing quite a substantial stock marketing group, and we wanted to float. We needed to get out at some stage, because once you put money in, we wanted to see how we could get out. And so Paul was brought on to do the end side of us.
Okay, righto. So we got 4 directors, right? We got
Yes.
no name yet.
No,
Brisbane
no.
something.
Oh, it was, yes.
What were some of the names that people cut? Because you put an ad in the paper.
There was-
you
there
talk
was-
about ads
no,
in the
no,
paper.
was
No,
Gary
no.
Balkin.
We sort of suggested to the public to have an
say.
input.
What'd you get? What sort of?
Oh, I can't remember.
Oh, we had
But
awesome
we already
Barracudas,
made up our mind.
Barracudas, we
Brisbane
had everything. It was
Barracudas.
always going to be
The
it was
Broncos.
always going to be the Broncos, because I was just a fan of the Denver Broncos. And,
Right.
and, you know,
Okay,
and
so you made the decision
No
on
one
that.
had any,
Yeah, that's
but
made
no
the
one,
decision, but-
but no one had fixed ideas. It wasn't like I argued against anyone. It was just that we hadn't thought about it.
Yeah.
Gary used to write articles in the Sunday Truth, which was the newspaper
was
at the
all
time.
lies, right?
And his articles, but his articles were such that, and he was a conniver, so he then started to put in these things for his article about, give us the name for this team in Brisbane, and that's when we got
Right.
every mum and pop in Queensland
Right.
sending us names.
And obviously-
but we've already made up our mind.
The Broncos was a popular name.
Well, the alliteration comes, Brisbane Broncos. So that
Bang
fitted
bang.
in.
The two Bs. Yeah, and I think it was
Well,
a
when
great.
you think that the other teams had, names like the Eels,
Yeah.
or the Rabbits, or the Dragons,
yeah.
Broncos,
Broncos.
and the alliteration double B, it all worked well. So
Yeah. What about the colours? Who came up with that
Well,
great idea?
can I tell you that story?
Yes,
The
first tell us.
Brisbane, the Brisbane Bullets were the big thing at that time. People
Yeah.
were going to
The
see
what's his name?
Brian Curl.
Brian Curl. He was
Brian
coach.
Curl had this going, and the popular movement in Brisbane at the time was the basketball, because it had the American flair, and people would go along. And Steve, you were pretty heavily involved at some point with them, but they actually gave to the public an interaction which sport up until that time had never done. For example, if you follow cricket, there's no interaction. If we get our sport from the UK, there's no interaction with the public. Whereas in America, it's all about, and that was the one thing we learnt day one. And when I was sitting down with people in the States, you had to involve your spectators.
Yep.
And that was the basic. But Brian Curl did that. And the colours for the Brisbane Bullets was blue, gold and white. So we did our first jersey, which we went down to New South Wales Rugby League and said, this is our jersey, blue, gold and white. And they said, eventually, didn't want to be too close to Parramatta, didn't want to be too close, but they almost agreed that was it. That night, we were guests of TAA, of all things, at the State of Origin, and we went along to the State of Origin in their box, and John Singleton there was pissed out of his eyeballs, and he was making all sorts of statements, and we said, have a look at the jersey. He had one look at it, and he said, that is crap, and he yelled out, don't you ever run on the field in blue.
Yeah.
And we were stunned. We just got through the New South Wales Rugby League. We had to go back and go on to the maroon and gold and white.
Yeah, right.
It was all because of John Singleton.
Maroon for Queensland?
Yes, and gold and white was, the colours.
Balanced out.
Gold, well, I've helped you out here.
Yeah,
Listen, right, gold is for the sands of the beaches.
Yeah, the beaches.
In Queensland. Okay, and
Wow.
and
White, because we're good people. We're white.
well, I didn't say that, but
No, but I want to throw that in.
oh yeah, okay. Well, white was more of a Brisbane. Remember Brisbane, the old Brisbane colours,
do.
red and white. So there's a bit of white. White could be the sands anyway. Of
Absolutely.
the great beaches we have.
So
here.
because of Singleton, we then changed, and that's when the colours, and it very much looked like the old Washington Redskins, if you followed American football.
Yeah.
So we did a few little things like we changed our colour pattern so it fitted in a little bit more like that. I can remember Wally and Gino blowing up when they saw these colours. They just weren't the way normal football teams, with the V's and the crosses.
right.
It was just a little bit different.
Well, different style of jersey, which hit the stands
Yeah.
and was very
But I
dramatic.
can remember Wally saying, "What do you think? I'm a prisoner. I remember him complaining on Gary's boat.
Righto. So you got your directors in line.
Yes,
You've got a jersey.
yes,
You've got nowhere to play yet.
no.
Obviously, the
Well,
old,
we could play it. The one thing we could do is play at the at Lang Park,
right.
under McAuliffe. But because McAuliffe got beaten in the franchise, when I went to get a lease, because I said, look, we need a 10-year lease because we're playing here. And there was a rugby league club there. The Queensland Rugby League had a club. So we didn't want to start a club. We just wanted to have a football team. And then he just said, well, you can't train here and you can't use the facilities other than on game day.
Right. Well, they wanted you for game day, obviously. 'cause-
Yes, because he had a deal done with Castlemaine to sell forex.
Right.
But that aside,
We'll get to that in a minute, Barry.
well, we drove around. We drove around trying to find grounds, and that's when we came through all sorts of relationships. Gary had South Davies Park, and then there was Newman Oval, and there was a third one I can't remember at the moment. And then of course there was the West Old Boys, so
Red Hill.
Fulcher Road. So we went there.
Still the
because-
home now of the club.
Yes, that's true. Still there, Fulcher Road.
What a place. Many memories there. Right. So we got now. What next do we need in this footballing world? If you're a
I
club,
think we need a CEO.
you need a CEO.
Yeah.
CEO first or a coach? Which is first?
CEO. CEO, because
CEO,
Robin,
yeah.
my daughter, and the CEO. Now, Steve, you came and played tennis at our place with this John Rebo. Earlier, with John MacArthur, with John.
Rebo never played tennis in his life.
But he was at our place, and that's where I met him. You brought him over to you, and then you said, CEOs, I think we should.
So you hang on. You got a tennis court in your backyard, Barry? You were.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Everyone's got one of those, haven't they?
Grass tennis court.
Grass tennis court.
Grass.
Jeez, you were into the big wigs.
Tell me about it. I used to play these. Just let me say something. I used to play these guys. I'd have to go home, mow the bloody thing, mark it.
Wow.
Totally bug it. They'd
That's a bit of a
arrive
story.
and they'd
My
beat
daughter,
me.
my wife, says that you sent all the three girls out there weeding the
Yeah,
grass.
they had to weed the grass. But
They
before
grew
a
up with
game, this
What
bloke-
sort of grass, Barry?
Yes, yes.
Kikuyu.
You couldn't eat it.
Couldn't eat it.
No.
But can I tell you, then Steve made the observation. He said, look, there's a good guy here. I think we should get John Rebo as your CEO. And I've gone, the one thing that kills football clubs is mates. We can't have an organisation of mates. So I said, look, we've got to look around. Anyway, Gary's then come back and said, I was just at a lunch and I heard John Rebo speak. Gosh, he was impressive.
Right.
Oh, we were eating humble pie here. So we went back and had another look, and we took Steve's advice and brought Rebo on, and he was just a gold brick. He was just wonderful.
Right. And did such a great job,
Workaholic.
didn't he?
And then we need a
You need a coach, don't
Coach.
you? You need a coach and you need
That's
a captain.
interesting.
So what about the coach? How do you find the coach? Who's the right person?
Well, he'd worked with John at the QRL.
Wayne had.
Yeah, Wayne had, and he was keen on him, and we were keen on him because
So John
Yeah.
John Rebo was his.
Well, you
He mentioned it.
played with him.
Yeah, I played with Wayne, and look.
Hang on, that's a story in that itself. You played
State
for
for the
state football with Wayne Bennett.
Mm.
Was he a good winger or not? Was he
fullback?
Was he a fullback?
Fullback.
I always
He played
thought he
fullback. We played
but-
fullback at the Sydney Cricket Ground. I saw Graham Langley step him
Right.
and score a try.
Well,
and as
Changa-
I'm running back, they're all going Changa. So I joined in on the chant. Changa, Changa.
Wayne wouldn't have found that too funny. I wouldn't have thought.
No. Wayne was a very good player. I think he was a better coach than player.
Right. Okay. Well, he did play for Queensland and Australia,
And
which he did as well.
on the
of
wing
course.
for Australia, but
On the wing, right. So there must have been coaches putting their hand up everywhere
yeah,
to
there
coach
were.
this
There were
new
a few.
franchise.
One was that I didn't mind as an alternative was Alan Fitzgibbon,
Right.
who was the current Cronulla coach's
Cronulla.
father.
Yep.
Who I thought was very good. I think Gary wanted Bob
Gary
McCarthy,
wanted Bob McCarthy,
who
was coaching South.
South, and they just won the premiership.
He'd sponsored him and so on. So
Right. So Bobby McCarthy was in the race.
But
Yeah. Who else
Jack
was it?
Gibson was the one that sort of gave us.
well, Jack. We went and saw Jack.
Yes. And you'd gone overseas.
I
with
knew
Jack.
him. I knew him because I went on one of his trips, and I sort of knew him vaguely.
Yeah.
But he was terrific, Jack, because we said he said, well, who would you like? And we said, well, we'd like Wayne Bennett, but he's got a contract, not worth the paper it's written on.
Yeah.
Just go and sign him. So we didn't sort of really, I suppose, at the stage, Baz. I don't think we really thought that might have been a hindrance.
No. Well, in fairness to Paul went down there
Yeah, well, that's
To Canberra. Because I was playing at the Raiders at the time. I
That's
remember
right.
when there's a bit of noise around the possibility of Wayne leaving,
yeah.
the Raiders.
No,
And
Wayne,
Paul
Paul
did-
didn't go down until
the end.
at the end. When remember we bought Paul. I went and picked up Wayne from the airport, and then we had a dinner over at Gary's place, and some of our directors got a bit exuberant.
Yeah. And we were
And-
sitting
and-
there.
and
We
Wayne,
all we heard.
and Wayne thought this is not my cup of
Yeah.
tea.
Yeah.
Right, did he?
So
well,
he wasn't.
We were
going.
there, Steve and I, and the other two came in with wobbly boots, and
they?
and all we heard was that Wayne's not into drinking and so on.
Well,
We're trying to lure him to come, and next thing the boys have come in. But fortunately, he rode with the punches.
Yeah.
But Paul went down and
Yeah.
So you signed
story.
you signed the coach.
Paul signed. Yeah, Paul
Yeah.
signed him.
Right. What 3-year deal? Did you give him first up or what?
Oh, I don't remember. Look,
It was,
you know,
it was like in those days, the word you bond. You know,
Yeah.
when we said
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
got the job, we virtually threw 5 years up. You know, as
Well,
the thing.
we threw 5 years up when the media were going to flick him.
Well, that,
And then, but
nine-
we've never had a contract with him.
No,
But
well,
we used
tell
to
me
do,
about it. 1990, what had happened, you talk about what happened last year, but the media was on to Wayne because by then, our third year, we hadn't won anything. We'd got 6, those days you had 5 into semis, or whatever they call
Yeah.
them. But
Top
we
5.
were coming 6, so we weren't doing badly, but we weren't winning.
yeah.
And Channel 10 carried rugby
Yeah.
league in those days, and they started this business of a night of asking people to come in, vote in whether
Whether
Wayne should be
Broncos should
sacked.
sack Wayne.
And I'll never forget, we got beaten by Canberra. I went home and sulked, and I'm watching Channel 10, and they're saying, oh, well, send in this, we think Bennett should be sacked. And they just wanted the odd person to write to them
Yeah.
to sack a coach. And I'm thinking, we're paying the coach.
It was a phone
His
poll. It was a
contract-
phone poll. It was a ring
was-
in.
yeah.
Ring in.
Oh,
and
on
we'll
10
let you-
years.
But
And
Yeah.
they said, we'll let you know on Monday night
Yeah.
the your
public was
decision.
going to
But
get rid
tell
of
us
it.
what you think whether the Broncos should sack Wayne.
Yeah.
And so that Monday we had a press conference and announced that we'd given Wayne a 5-year extension.
That's
Which
the
he
way
didn't
to
know.
sign
Which he
it.
didn't know about.
He didn't know anything
He
about
didn't know.
because I called the press conference and they thought, oh, the chairman's called the press conference, therefore they're going to sack Bennett. So instead of having half a dozen people there of a Monday for press conferences, we had the whole place lit up. Every network was there, the whole lot. And Wayne's come in from his farm Monday morning, and he's walked in and all was going on. I thought he was going to go back out the door. So I've gone to him and said, listen, just sit down. Everything's under control. And I thank the media for being there. I thank the interest of all the public and just wanted to announce that we decided to give him
extension.
another
His
5 years.
contract.
And I can still remember
days.
hearing his like it was just
Relief.
He had no idea. And frankly, we didn't sign anything.
Yeah.
And he was there, for
But
14 years.
Isn't that I think that what it did for Wayne, it gave him the confidence. There's nothing worse than being in an employment with insecurity.
Oh.
You know,
Yeah.
You
Kevin,
can't-
you've been through that.
Yeah, I have.
So you know what it's like.
Yeah.
And I think every coach, but if you know that, like Craig Bellamy, all the top, Ivan Cleary, all the good coaches,
Longevity.
they
there.
know that they have got, some
Yeah.
security there. And
Well,
they're not...
after 1990, when we had this, the next 12 or 13 years, we won 6 premierships
Yeah.
with one coach.
We're going to get to that. We're still just building the club here at the
Okay,
moment.
sure,
Gents,
yeah.
you're jumping ahead of the
Okay,
schedule.
sorry
mate.
about that.
Let's go back. Let's go back.
but we
We
had
still
to-
haven't. We've got a coach now. We need a captain.
Well,
Who-
your name was mentioned, but I
don't
voted
think
for
it
you,
was.
Kev. I voted for you.
So what about was Wally keen? Because Wally and Gene had talks with Manly.
Well, it was interesting because
was a
they
great
were,
story.
but then
They talked to the Gold Coast.
they were up. But
They took-
actually, Gene had
Gene had said to Bob
committed his
McCarthy.
word to Bob McCarthy that he wouldn't make a decision.
And-
So then Reeves and I and Paul was interviewing them at Paul's office.
Yeah, I was there, and you
Well,
were
no.
there.
Paul's stockbroking office.
I was there,
Yeah.
by the
Yeah.
way, and he just...
He
and of
tore
course,
into...
Gino. Well, Gino was the first.
Gino was the
Because
first.
we were told, get Gino, you get Wally. That was what we were told.
Okay.
Rightly or wrongly, that could be wrong, but that's what we were told. Wally was waiting outside, and Paul in his office wasn't quiet and demeaning. He was very loudly spoken. So
Right.
the whole office heard. And when Gino very innocently said, look, I can't make a decision now. I promised Bob McCarthy I'll talk to him, which I thought was
That's
pretty
fair enough.
reasonable.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget because Paul just went ballistic, and then he stopped talking, went to the fridge and got a couple of beers out and threw the beers to us, but didn't offer one to Gino. Do you remember that?
Of course I remember.
And next thing, out sitting outside is Wally.
He's Australia's captain and Queensland captain.
And there was this pregnant silence while Paul just didn't talk and no one talked. And, I didn't want to say anything because I just couldn't comprehend. And anyway, Gino just left, and I admired Gino for sticking to his guns, even though it wasn't suitable to us. But then Wally came in and said, "Where do I sign?"
He'd heard all the
He'd heard all the noise.
He'd heard all
screaming,
the
and
noise. He just said, "Show me where to
I
sign."
let him in, and he said, "Mate, where do I sign? I'm not going through that."
Well, that's pretty good. So you got a pretty good grab at the moment. You got Wayne Bennett, one of the.
Yeah.
Well, he was one of the best coach. Not then, but he was.
Yeah, but
He had a great record in the Queensland Rugby League.
and a great mindset.
And State of Origin coach
Good
as well.
mindset. You got people with good mindsets. Something can happen.
Yeah, and now you got yourself a captain in Wally, and then you went. Who was the next? What was the next priority after that?
Oh, I don't know. It was mainly. It was.
Well, Wayne was
no, it
coaching the
mainly
State of
Wayne,
Origin side.
yeah.
Remember, he was coaching the State of Origin side.
Yeah.
So a lot
This
of
is
the
in
players.
'87.
GD, I think. might
No,
have
this
been
was the
on
big. This was
87.
87. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
87, and he was coaching the State of Origin 87.
Was he?
Yeah, he did,
And,
yeah.
and in fact, it was following that fellows like Dowling and Conescu and those guys just sort of came.
Brian Niebling.
Brian.
Yeah.
Oh,
What
yeah,
about
Brian.
Alfie Langer?
Well,
Well, it was funny.
That's
I went
another-
with Reeves up to sign him
Up
at
to Ipswich.
Sadler's Crossing.
You been that?
I have.
Went up to Ipswich, eh?
I went there. I
Catch
got
the
through.
train up? Did you,
no,
Steve?
No, we went up in a car, and we had to be careful of when we parked it.
Yeah, that everything was safe.
But I remember Alf, and I was struck by how small he was.
yeah,
Like he was tiny.
65 kilograms in his first
Oh,
ever State of Origin.
Yeah, well, he must have had someone else standing on the
On the scales.
scales when that happened. But he had a manager with him,
Right.
who was a guy who worked on the council with him,
Oh,
and he was I think he was
on
a
the
New
stop
Zealand
sign.
guy.
Right.
And Alf didn't say a word, And Janine was there,
Yeah.
and the other guys spoke a little bit, but it was I forget what the money situation. I'd never really inquired about what the boys were being paid. But
No.
anyhow, he was terrific.
Yeah.
Like to get him on board and what he turned out and
Yeah.
and all the rest of it. But Wayne was sort of had a very strong influence in who he would say to Reeves, go to do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
You got this bloke
and they
up at-
respected both of them. They
Yeah.
respected Rebo and they respected
Yeah.
Wayne. So that was a big help to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, it wasn't the big staff that the NRL clubs have now, was it? Initially,
Oh, yeah, we had
you-
no
you would have been
idea.
CEO.
CEO.
The
We
coach,
had
Wayne-
Robin Maranta
Yeah,
came
as-
on board as Reeves'
PA.
secretary.
PA, yeah.
PA.
And then she was the
We
PA
had a
for-
marketing manager.
That's right.
We had a marketing manager, Richard Winton.
Winton.
Right, I remember Richard.
And we
Richard.
had
He
the-
lasted about.
Was it
6 or
hard?
7
Was it
months.
hard trying? Let's go to sponsorship as well. Now, it's a great
now
story.
there's a great story on that.
So, Forex obviously were keen to be involved with you guys. I would have thought.
Forex had locked up. They'd locked up Lang Park for 10 years at 100,000. So that was they locked up all the beer sales at Lang Park for 10,000.
So no other brewer could get in there.
No other brewer could get in.
Exclusive.
But that 1997 was when Alan Bond bought Castlemaine Forex.
Right.
He not only bought them...
Would have been 87.
87.
Sorry, 87. Sorry about that. 87, he bought Forex, Castlemaine, and took them over to Perth and stupidly put on their labels that Castlemaine Forex was addressed in Perth.
Oh.
At the same time, there was an attempt to take something back here, and Bernie Power, who's from a very well-known hotelier family and pedigree, he had made up a decision to tackle this southern...
Forex.
This was this Queensland chip on the shoulder, we're going to tackle people, like us with the football and Bernie with the beer, and he decided that he would start his own brewery. Now, that's an easy thing to say, but it's a very difficult thing to do. However, the family was well versed in beer and hotel management. Bernie had been over to Anheuser-Busch and spent some time with the Bush family about the modern technology of brewing beer.
Right.
So he'd come back with that knowledge, and he had a massive amount of bloody intestinal fortitude, because to take on the beer barons of Australia, John Elliott in Melbourne and all the big ones.
Yeah.
And Bond, of course, at that stage was bulletproof with the money he had. And here was this fledgling company here in Brisbane. Now, what he did is he went to Porky and said, I want to float a company from Morgan's, a company that would then build a brewery and tackle these southern breweries. And Paul did exactly that. He did an IPO, a fundraising document, and started the process. And at the same time, we wanted to get involved with someone, and we all knew Bernie Power. We knew him socially, so it was easy for us to cross paths and talk. So we said, look, why don't we get involved with you? And the first contract was $1 million.
That was unheard of, wasn't it?
Oh, unheard of. I mean, $10,000 a year for Castlemaine selling beer exclusively, $10,000.
Yeah.
We're getting $1 million up front.
Yeah.
And what he did was he worked out in his prospectus that all their financials were worked out on the basis of the percentage they would get of the Queensland market. So if he could get 8% of the Queensland market, he would produce Y amount of money and therefore X amount of profit. And you work backwards from there. We went to him and said, listen, Bernie, $1 million's terrific, but if we help you get more than 9%, we wouldn't mind a little clip on that. And this is us with nothing except, an interest.
Just a name and a name.
Few of us had hotels. I think I had a hotel at that stage. I think I had the Salisbury, and Paul had the Newman. Yep. And who else? Gary, of course, had so there was a bit of a connection, although frankly I knew nothing about it.
I was going to buy a hotel, but I thought, no, I'll just wait.
He was smart. He was the smart one.
So you're going to put the beer into your hotels as well?
Oh, yes. So we then became the greatest advocates for Power Beer, and to the point, the jerseys, of course, with Powers. But I would then, and we would all go to functions afterwards, and people would say, oh, look, I apologise, I haven't got any Powers. You'd go to someone's house and they'd have Forex and they'd apologise. Yeah. It became such a thing, and all the players took it on. Chris Johns worked at my place, and Sam Backer worked there as well. And the Broncos were just associated with Powers, and conversely. So then the publicans and there was this chip on the shoulder Queensland thing that said, bugger them down there, we can do just as well up here. And of course he did much better than his forecast was in the prospectus, and of course we got an extra clip on top of that.
Well, that's good,
It was the biggest sponsorship in the history of Australian sport. And in fact, when I went to London, I was running around trying to find similar type levels, because by that stage we were getting a lot more. We were considered one of the highest paid or sponsored football franchises in
that's unbelievable,
and all because of Bernie.
Ballsy from Bernie's part, but the two just married in well together.
Yeah.
Now, often I walk the streets of Brisbane, and people tell me about the first Broncos jersey. It's not it's got power on the front. There's no S.
Oh, isn't it?
No, see?
Well, I didn't know that.
didn't know
I mean,
that either.
to me, it was,
Well, I need a clip then. Give me a clip of that. eh?
for
I'm
telling-
unemployed at the moment.
for telling us.
Well, there you go. So the
yeah, no
original,
idea.
the 1988 jersey is Power Brewing, not Powers with the apostrophe S.
Power Brewing.
Well, I must have another.
Is
look
that
in
right,
time, but,
Das?
I'll have a look now.
but it didn't.
I'm pretty sure it is.
well.
Maybe I could be wrong. So we'll just roll
then,
with that.
Then, of course, the fuss and bother started because we couldn't
You can't sell Powers at
Lane
Park.
Park.
Yeah.
So we put. I mean, it would really then become every week we were told that we were going to get kicked out of the competition because we were upsetting Ron McAuliffe, who Steve got on very well with. But that aside, we then would do dreadful things. We'd bring Eskies in
With
the
Powers logo
in,
on it.
of course, and then they'd find out, and then we had a classic one where we'd have these meetings, and it was really just a bit of fun that we had, and they'd say, "You can't put signage," and we'd say, "Oh, what sort of signage?" "Well, you know what signs are. You can't have signs." So then we'd have fireworks with Powers,
Oh,
and it wasn't a sign. And then the next one, which was quite monumental in Australia, was he said, "You can't have any fixed signs." So we then
So like the ones like on
around
the ground.
Yeah.
We couldn't make
Yeah.
any money out of Lane Park, so we couldn't survive financially there. But the interesting thing about this one, we were playing St George of a Saturday afternoon,
I remember this. I was in Canberra. But you go, Barry.
and at half time we asked Wayne to stay on the field, and we put a corral around it with Powers around the whole
on the banners, yeah.
and the cameras came out because this had never happened. At rugby union, they stay on the field. It used to stay on the field at half time, but this was the first time ever. And I went to Melbourne for a board meeting the next day, and there was, even on the Melbourne Age and the Australian newspaper, they had a photo of the Broncos football team at half time with this Powers thing around it.
So you guys must have been pretty powerful, like to convince Wayne Bennett to have his half-time chat.
Well,
Well,
in
as
the
long
middle
as it
of-
was in the
of-
shade.
Is that what he said? Right,
It's
yeah,
in the
okay.
shade. As long as it's in the shade.
So I remember
it's okay.
being in Canberra, I'm watching this. It was a Saturday game. Remember that?
Yes, it was a
I
Saturday.
can't recall the Dragons being the team, but I'm
Yeah,
thinking,
it was
what
Dragons,
are they
wasn't it?
doing? These Broncos fellas.
Well, that was
And
why
they-
it was done, because and it was every week we were told we couldn't do a certain thing, so we'd all work out what we could do with
Yeah.
not, in any way, doing the wrong thing, but certainly doing the edgy thing. And of course, the next day we'd have headlines: Broncos getting kicked out, Broncos this, Broncos that, and it just got worse and worse. And then we decided we'd go to ANZ Stadium.
Right. So before you went to ANZ Stadium, so you missed the finals. I arrived in
92.
for the 1990 season.
Oh,
You missed me a
99, sorry.
couple of years, Barry. I
there
went
you
okay.
are, see.
I got the Player of the Year in 1990. You
Well, there
gave
you
me the
are.
trophy, I think. Anyway, right. So
Why did I forget that?
missed finals in 88 and 89. All sorts of pressure on the coach.
Yeah.
Why aren't the Broncos playing finals? You're full of internationals, full of Origin players. You're making lots of money, which you probably like. The crowds were coming
We're building,
to obviously,
as we're building,
at Lane Park, but then you make another good decision to re-sign, keep Wayne on, and Wally Lewis gets moved on.
That was
Well, that's
That was probably
Interesting
one. That's.
That
I know
was-
there's been some big decisions at the club in its history, but that's probably the biggest.
Well, what happened was Wayne came to us and told us why he wanted to make the change that he did.
Right.
We
don't have to go into the detail
No,
of it.
quite dramatic.
the thing that was important, it was Reeves. There were four of us, him, Reeves, and that was it. He said, "No one will ever say why. I don't want to repeat any.
Right.
And no one has ever said. We've never ever told anyone.
Well, we don't need
And
to.
Wayne sort of always reflects back. He said that I think that's what made our club, the fact that he could come to the board, board meeting, and because he thought we were a bit loose, because we would say, these guys always wanted to know who's playing and who's not.
Yeah.
And I remember one time he said, I think Gary might have said, "Look, is Alf playing this weekend? He's injured." And Wayne said, "I'm not going to tell you because all you'll do is big note to your mates." So he wouldn't tell us. So that was the thing. He said, "I run the football. You run the
the club.
business."
Yep.
And we did.
Yeah.
And we put up with it, and that was okay. And, you know, he was good. At one board meeting, he said, you know, I don't even mind coming to these board meetings now. Because, you know, he didn't like the structure of all that, but we were pretty...
So did you guys feel under pressure, though? Like, did you feel heat?
No, really?
Well, just coming back to that Wayne story, I'll never forget Kev Callagher was our communications media man,
Big
and
Kev.
he came to us and said, I can't get Wayne to talk to
The media.
rugby league journos, and we need crowds.
Publicity.
You know, we've got to. So I remember, and I didn't know Wayne very well at all, but I knew, you know, he sort of came from a police background and everything was straight down the middle. So I said, hey, Wayne, we've got a problem, and the problem is that you're not talking to, you know, Paul Malone and Barry Dick and Steve Ricketts and these fellas. And he said, I'm the coach, Kev's the media man. That's the way it goes. I said, let me put it this way. If we don't have any write-ups in the paper, we don't get bums on seats. And if we don't get bums on seats, we don't get any money. We don't get any money.
You don't get paid.
And I didn't have to say any more. He said, what time do you want me? So on Monday, every Monday for the next 14 years, he would come in at 20 to 12. The media guys would come in and he would spend 2 to 3 hours, and he would then sit down with someone like a Paul Malone, and then he'd go through a story which Paul might want to play or show in or print on the Thursday. But he'd do that individually, and he'd do it for the... And the Monday was good because they could all ask about the game of the weekend and what happened and so on. And he did it. We used to have a salad and a lunch and everything else, and everyone was happy as Larry. And that's why when I said to you before about when Wayne came in and we offered him the extra 5 years, that was the Monday, and that was just a normal Monday, only this time it was quite crowded. But the fact of the matter was, he didn't have to be told twice. The moment he understood that we're running a business, and if we don't have bums on seats, then everyone suffers. You know?
Yeah. All right, so Wayne's got the media under control, Wayne and Kev, and you guys, which is important because...
Very much.
If you look at the modern Broncos...
Oh, please not.
We won't, but like the popularity of the Broncos, but that is amazing. And from day one, you guys hit the ground, didn't you, with popularity? The club's always been a fan favourite.
Well, the undercurrent is that Brisbane was a rugby league town. But, you know, as Barry said before, we're in a bit of a slump. The rugby union was popular, basketball had gone well. But what we found then was that the facility that we had, and that's what caused us to leave to go to ANZ Stadium, because the facility we had there just catered for, it was booze, boys and bash. That's all it was, you know.
And you want to give the fans more of an experience.
We wanted women. I mean, we went along to there was a trial, a State of Origin trial, and we had the little halfback from the Roosters came up to compete against...
Laurie Spina,
then went up north. He was a competitor with Elf at that stage, and we watched it, and the girls wanted to go to the toilets, and there was something they couldn't go. And I remember raising that with McAuliffe and saying, listen, if we're going to... And I can remember him saying to me, Barry, rugby league is a workers' game, it's a man's game. And that was the first thing we decided, that how stupid that is. 50% of the population. You're cutting off half your population. And if the men if the women go to the football, the men go to the football. So, and we made Sally Ann Atkinson our number one supporter.
That's right, I remember that.
We actually went directly the other way, and we had choreographs. We had people from the Expo was on in '88.
Yep.
We had an American choreographer who came and taught our girls, you know, all this sort of American dancing and entertainment, which we got from. And of course, Lou Edwards was the boss of, you know, and he was a partner of mine. So we actually had these people come from Expo, and they entertained the crowd, and our crowd then just enjoyed the afternoon or the evening. Just whether we won or lost, of course, is important, but it was the fact that they could go away feeling like they've had a money's worth.
Right now, 92, Broncos win the premiership. Right into that. There was a couple of key signings. The re-signing of Wayne Bennett, obviously very instrumental. Trevor Gilmeister, I think, coming up from the Roosters was a big signing. And Lazo was the probably final piece of the puzzle to get this juggernaut where you wanted it to go.
Yes.
Would that be a fair call?
That's a very strong call. And
Yeah.
Lazo was.
But I think the thing that doesn't get recognised is the guys that glue it all together. Sure, they were really good players and glamour players, but a place like Gavin Allen and Mark Hone.
Oh, I'm not underestimating those
you
guys.
know, you would know. You'd
Yeah.
appreciate.
Well,
They do
Kerry.
all the
How
mopping
good was
up.
Kerry?
So
Yeah, Alan Can, part of that first premiership.
Oh,
You know,
Matto,
Julian
Terry
O'Neill,
Madison, Julian.
Terry Madison.
yeah.
The list, Michael Hancock. You know,
Garrett
Chris-
Walters running
Chris
out of
John.
dummy
Garrett
half.
Walters with his fake mullet running back.
Chris
you know,
Johns.
Johnsy was another
Johnsy.
key signing from the Dragons.
Burl came through.
Yeah, Steve Renouf. So, and Kelvin Giles was a big
Yeah.
part of that as
Yes, he
well.
was,
You know,
yeah.
the physical
Yes,
performance person. He really changed the way the Broncos, their mentality. I remember him torturing us at different times. But so we win the premiership in '90. How did that feel? How did you guys celebrate that?
You know, I mean,
Apart from your private jet to Sydney for the
No,
game
no,
and
no,
your
nothing
private
like
jet
that,
home.
nothing like that,
No,
nothing.
never.
But
We're
I
always
got to
were-
tell you the story. Paul didn't get on very well with Ken Arthurson and John Quayle. And after the game, I mean, they had given us hell for 5 years. They had threatened to kick us out of the competition
Yeah.
virtually every
I
week.
remember, yeah.
It was awful. And our sponsors were getting very edgy because they kept reading the paper. So we didn't have any love-ins. And then after the grand final, we were all celebratory. And Arthurson and Quayle arrived. And Porky shifted them to the other room. So tell them to go
In the
and
dressing
have-
room?
They were in the room on their own. and in the meantime, we were all celebrating. And I remember I went in there thinking, well,
Better
I'd
go
try
and
and
say
put
hello.
the bushfire out anyway. So, and it was ugly. But to be quite honest, the way I went about it is I thanked them very much for all their guidance and left it at that. So
Very smart, very smart. All right, so then the big move. So you knock Lang Park on the head, make a decision to go out
Paul
to.
did that. Paul did that.
Well, how did they would have been?
Well, we
Would have been
knew
very
we were-
popular.
We were getting nowhere with the Lang Park Trust.
Right.
We were getting nowhere.
With your
and it was
particularly with
affecting-
Powers.
It was affecting our capacity to earn some money to grow the club.
Yeah.
And so Paul did a deal with Jim Sawley.
Right.
And away we go. But remember what Bob Gibbs, who he invited Barry, myself and Gary up to his office to sort of see whether we could turn Paul around.
Right.
And after...
So Bob Gibbs at the time was
he was the Minister for Sport.
Minister for Sport. Right.
And he wanted to keep us at
Keep
Lang
you-
Park, our traditional home of
Yeah.
rugby
well,
league.
so did Wayne Goss. Wayne Goss
Yeah,
rang me
all
and
of-
said,
all
over
of
my
those.
dead body, you'll leave.
Yeah.
You'll leave Lang Park. And we said, well, I don't want to get involved in dead bodies. I mean, we were just working out. This is the Premier of Queensland. Really.
Yeah.
But Gibbsy, I remember he said, when we said, no, I'm sorry, we're going to, we
Yep.
made the deal, Paul's made the deal, we're happy, we're going to support it, we're 100% committed to going. He said, well, I hope you all go broke.
Oh, yeah. But Paul was
He
the
did.
director
Wow.
of Watpac. You'd remember this, of course. So it was Watpac that was doing the reconstruction. So we spent nearly $10 million on upgrading
ANZ
Stadium.
It was the old Commonwealth Games site, wasn't it?
We had
82.
we had to build another stadium on the west side, and we were supposed to under Sawley we were supposed to bring there were movable stands for the Commonwealth Games. We were trying to rectangularise it, but what we were promised and what we got were two different things. But the point we got at was that we could actually make money because A, we could sell Powers beer, B, we could actually have signage. I mean, these are the things that any football stadium makes its money out of, and we were getting zero at Lang
But don't
Park.
forget, we got the revenue out of the boxes. Like it became
We
a
sold
very,
corporate-
very
we
social.
sold
Corporate
160
boxes.
They were open boxes too, weren't
Open
they?
boxes,
Yeah.
unheard of. And we had the dining, which was like a
On the
corporate
basketball
who's
courts.
do
They were
on the
fantastic.
basketball court. Like, people were dining. So
Yeah.
So what it had achieved was that, commercially people would see each other, at
Yeah.
dining, and you'd see lots of who's who of Brisbane's business and everything. And then the boxes, I forget how many we had. We had
165 because we had them on the western side as well,
Yeah.
and we had a
Had
queue up
smaller
of
ones.
people wanting to get them.
Yeah, just
But-
Barry, just on that, you talk about the sponsorship with Powers, but also the Broncos were the leaders in getting the tax deduction for sponsorship for boxes. And we did that with the tax office with Porky.
See, that's
And
why we had
that's
this
why we had
account.
him.
That's why we had the financial control.
But
He was the
well,
one-
it was interesting, Kev.
Yeah, yeah.
We actually went to the tax department, Paul and myself, and Paul negotiated a deal with the Deputy Commissioner, which was very favourable, and it was as good a deal as anyone had achieved, if not better, and it became the hallmark for all clubs.
Sponsorship of clubs.
For
Yeah.
getting a tax deduction, and the tax department, all credit to them, saw the benefits for the whole community.
Yeah. Well, putting money back into the game.
Absolutely, well, into the community.
Community,
and the
yeah.
money that was then going to be spun off, and that was one.
Is that and that
funny
rule still in today?
Yes, well, it is. I'm sure the same parameters work.
Yeah.
But the funny thing about that meeting with the tax department, Porky was a big guy, and I'm probably not much bigger than Alfie when he was recruited. We got into the lift, and Porky said, "Jono, you little beauty," or words to that effect. He actually picked me up, which is quite easy for him, and he hung me over his back by my ankles. And we got the lift down, and we walked out of the taxation office with me with my nose up Porky's bum. And he said, "Jono, we're going to get pissed." But it was a major breakthrough. 165 boxes.
Yeah.
And we were paying. There's probably
10 people in a box.
Yes.
More?
Yeah,
would have been
It was,
10.
it was 10 or 20 grand a year then, which was relatively big money 40
Oh,
years ago.
huge, yeah.
And we're getting a tax deduction for it, for
Yeah.
80% of it, I think
Yeah.
it was.
Well,
Besides that, and it was terrific, that was important. But it was just the place to be seen.
Yeah.
It was the place to be seen and the place to mix, you know.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was great, you know.
well,
PR.
you covered the corporates, you covered the families because you had all those
Yeah, yeah.
mascots running around, you know.
And the other thing,
And it-
we made the point from the American experience was, you know, what I learned in America was the crowd leaves with more than the football memories. And we had, I'm trying to think of the
Willie
group.
Nelson.
No, we had him
Well, there's a
sing
story about
where
Willie, isn't there?
I got that story. Don't worry.
Did you bring him the hooter or what? Who bought Willie the
I
hooter?
tell her the story.
That's another story.
We had him up in the board.
So this is so you guys introduced entertainment.
Well, what happened
This is
was
Sony.
Reeves and,
Sony was
Sony were Dennis.
No,
Dennis
Hanlon.
Hanlon.
Yeah, great
Reeves
man,
and,
Dennis.
uh,
Shout out to you, Dennis.
I'll tell
You're
you
the
what
man,
happened.
Dennis.
Can I just say we were Friday at Daniel's, and
Daniel's
we were playing,
Steakhouse,
and
no
we were
longer
playing
there.
Penrith on the Sunday, and someone said, probably Dennis, "What's your crowd like for Sunday?" And Penrith never had
A big following.
a big base up here. So we rang up Richard, what's his name, the marketing guy, or
Shane Edwards.
No,
Who?
but I thought it was Richard was still there.
No.
He wasn't there.
Richard.
No, he was
Wow.
Anyway, that was
No, it was
Would have been
Wood.
Shane.
might have been Shane. We
was
rang up and they said, "Oh, we've got 33,000 or something," which was bad for us. And he said, you know, I remember Paul going, "Oh, you know, he's had a few on board," and he's gone, "Oh, what else? We can't go with 33,000. We've got to get more than that." And anyway, out of nowhere, Dennis Hanlon said, "Oh, Willie Nelson's in Sydney. It's not doing anything on Sunday. Would you think of flying him up?" And like with a long lunch at Daniel's, that was an easy decision, of course. The answer was yes. And next thing, we flew him up on the Sunday.
He flew up and we had it at the board. We had
Up in-
the
up in
top
the
of
executive-
ANZ Stadium. There
the
was a little
executive.
boardroom where we could entertain. So we had about. I know Paul's brother was there, Robbie. Robbie got
That's another
Robbie
story.
He had a few
carried away.
beers.
But anyhow, I remember, you know, we had about 20 or 30 people. It was fairly, you know,
Just
fairly
an executive
in
group.
the boardroom up there, up the top left hand.
Can I just fill in? You go on, but I mean, we had Archbishop Rush, we had Inspector O'Sullivan, who was the police inspector,
Yeah.
and in our little group, these were the people standing around. Go on.
So anyhow, his manager then sort of interrupts, you know, everyone just having a drink and everything. Says, "Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen." He said, "I'm sorry, but we'll have to finish up today." He said, "Mr. Nelson has to have a bit of personality." He had to have a joint before he went on and entertained. But you know, that was great because Dennis would see the benefit in. I think we paid a little bit of money.
45,000, by the way.
Yeah.
We had 9
Yeah.
9 to 10,000 walk-ups.
Well, the average
because
that
they
year
heard.
was 43,000.
Yeah.
I think it's still a record
but we
today.
used to work that pretty hard.
Yeah.
We worked that pretty hard because, for instance, we sort of worked on the theme, it's more than a game of football. So
Yeah.
we put on things for the family, entertainment, things that you see now regularly, but at that stage it wasn't, you know, it was unusual. And
Well, we had
Yeah.
muesli bars. Remember the manufacturer of muesli bars? We used to say to them, "You've got a crowd there." And you know, I've learnt this from a number of people. Stefan was a classic at telling me these things. When you get a crowd in an area, you do something with them. And we would say to charities, for example, if it was Red Cross, we'd say, "Well, look, why don't you use 40,000 people and involved with them. You know,
Yeah.
we used to have charities, and we'd give so many tickets to the charities. They'd go and sell them and make money. So instead of them having, but in the meantime, we were getting converts to our game. But
Yeah.
we were giving the charity something, and I can remember the muesli bars. They used to go around in the golf cart
Yeah,
and throw
throw
these
'em out.
muesli bars to the
Yeah.
kids. So they went away, you know, with a little bit more than just a game of football.
Yeah.
And that was what the whole aim of what we did, and was, in my view, the reason. But all we did is copy what the Yanks did, by the way. You know, go to Mile High Stadium, they give you bloody ski tickets, and you'll see some 85-year-old lady with ski tickets. Like, I don't think she's going to shush boom down you know, those areas. But that's the principle is you go there and you get a little bit more than a game.
Yeah. Well, as a player in those days, I remember sort of watching some of the games when I wasn't playing, and the responsible service of alcohol was just not a non-event. Now, our young producer Darcy would have loved to have been around at
What about
ANZ
the
Stadium.
machines? We had the machines.
Well, you had kegs
Yeah, we had
on the
kegs
back
on
of
the back.
people.
we had the first machines.
Yeah.
Again, we pinched those, and we also did it with Coca-Cola.
So people didn't have to go and queue
They
up
did-
at the
no,
bar.
we'd go
There was
there
a
and-
Powers keg strapped on, and they would just
Yeah.
they'd
Yeah.
deposit the cash.
They'd go
whatever
around
the-
box to box, and
You see them in the sun, and all these blokes and you know, having a good time, enjoying
Yeah.
the day's activities at the football, but also you didn't have to get up to go and get a beer.
No, it was great, wasn't
Unbelievable,
Yeah.
you fellas, eh? Pioneers.
well, it was all different. You know, we had to make something work, and you know, you just can't rely on what.
See,
was
Barry
happening.
touched on it before. We were constantly under threat from the New South Wales Rugby League
Yeah,
about that we weren't, you know,
tying in with the rules.
You got to understand the game then was very much controlled by the New South Wales, and hence that's what forced, you know, Super League to in existence. You know, and I think that they were stopping the, you know, the growth of the game, to be honest. You
Yeah.
know,
And you guys tried to knock those walls down.
We just think that you know, some of the decisions it was just mind blowing. You know, it was hard to explain now.
Yeah,
But
Can
it was
I
a
just
real
briefly touch upon it. When I'll never forget when we got the franchise. I remember getting called by someone on Talk Drive radio from Sydney saying, "Oh, you're the guys that have got the new franchise." Yes. Which club in Sydney? You know, which one are you going to sort of have a look at to see which one? I said, "No, we're not doing that. We're going to the States. We're not looking south. We're looking east." And we then decided that was what we wanted to do, and we had a lot of interaction with particularly the Denver Broncos, but there were other clubs. Steve I think you went to New Orleans, didn't you? So there was it New
in the
Orleans?
US.
Yeah, we went.
With Jack.
Yeah.
But we then regularly, and I'd been doing that for something like 30-something years with Pat Boland, the owner of the Denver Broncos, and John Beek and the whole family. We go fishing together and all that stuff. So we became very good friends, and all we could do is pick their brains as to how do they get. See, they had a full stadium. They've had Mile High Stadium has been full since when we went over. I went over to learn, and then when we got there, we found out there was nothing to learn because the person that was looking after the attendance, the place had been sold out since 1969. So when we asked what's the secret, the guy said, "I got no idea. We just sell out."
Yeah.
So Mile High was like that. I mean, it's a long story, but we were playing golf down at it was a pro-am down at Sanctuary Cove, and Arnold Palmer was there, and he was playing with Bobby Hagan, who was from Canterbury.
Bulldogs, yeah.
And I was playing the group in front, and then he introduced me to a fellow called Vic, somebody, I can't remember, I'll think of his name, and he was a director of the Denver Broncos. So we got, John Rebo came down and we gave a whole stack of gear, and I said, "Look, take that back to Pat Boland." And then Pat Boland contacted us and said, "Thank you for the gear, it's wonderful." And we had wonderful gear. It was Adidas gear. Remember the fellow, Aussie Rules guy who looked after it?
No, we'd take them over in RM Williams, and they loved that.
You know,
They
we
loved
took
that.
over.
RM Williams. Remember,
we
you
sent-
used to wear the RM Williams. Remember,
Yeah.
we had some RM Williams gear at one stage.
Yeah, the boots and the jeans. And
We took them over. I remember we went to the Atlanta Falcons one time, and the guy came rushing out when it was Reeves, myself, and Shane. And the guy came rushing out to greet us like as if we were long lost friends. We'd met him 1 year before, because he said, God damn, man, that R.M. Williams. He said, I'll wear that. And everyone says, where'd you get it from? You know, and he's
Australia,
hoping
mate.
we had another one for him, you know. So,
The point I was getting at was that Pat contacted us to thank us for the gear, and it was out as a gear. And anyway, and he said in his letter, he sent me a letter, and it said, if ever you're passing by. So at the end of the year, 8 of us went over there because they said, oh, yeah, have a few. And then we 8 of us went over there and spent 2 weeks with the Denver Broncos. And I just said to Pat Bowen, I said, never say to an Aussie when you're passing by, because Aussies are passing by.
They pass by all the time.
Americans don't leave the country. I mean, 90% don't have passport. So, passports. So, in fact, we then developed this relationship, and we then flew them over here. They went to Hayman for a couple of days, and they came down here and watched.
we played the East. We played the Roosters at the sports ground, and I remember them. They were all sitting down there, all their coaching staff, and they've saw Alf tackle someone. God damn, man, what's he doing? Because they just had offence and defence.
Yeah.
In fact, one of them, Wade Phillips was a coach. He took over from Dan Reeves. Dan Reeves got sacked. There's a great story about that. Dan Reeves got sacked by Pat, and then he put in Wade Phillips. And Wade came over with his family and went to the Hayman Island, then came down, went to the coast, and became but they got as enthusiastic about our game as anyone. In fact, more so, because they just couldn't believe the continuity and the body contact. I mean, they just couldn't. It just made them very, very content in watching the games.
Yeah. All right, let's get on to 93. Won the premiership 92. Back-to-back. First club to do so since Parramatta in the early 80s.
Yes.
How good did that feel?
Well, that was wonderful. That was one where
Well, it
we
was,
went to.
you know, I mean, we were more concerned about the business. You guys were doing your thing on the field, and we were very proud of that and very happy about that. But it was constantly, you know, reviewing how can the business get better.
Yeah.
Because that was our role.
Yeah.
Our role wasn't to pick the team or you know, that was Wayne always said that's my role, and we left it with him. Wayne and Shane, John and Shane. I mentioned Shane because Shane had a very big role, you know, in the marketing, didn't he?
Yeah,
He was terrific.
Shane was terrific.
You know, and you know, he was also really, really good at, you know, coordinating our sponsors. And we had a really good group of sponsorship, like trips. We would take people away for home games. So it wasn't just us going away because we're playing in Parramatta, we can go down and get on the drink because the boys are playing.
No.
It was about taking sponsors down there and entertaining them so they'd feel good because
Part
next year we want you to re-sign.
Yeah.
And the women were really important in that role.
Yeah.
Because what we found over time was that a guy would say, oh, my sponsorship's coming up and I'm hesitant. And the wife would say, oh, no, we've got to, you know, you should re-sign that because I want to go away with blah, blah, blah and blah, 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 you know.
Yeah,
So,
I understand. Because I remember even as a player
Yep.
back at the old Leagues Club, and you guys would have your dinner post-game. You're always back there, and you'd have some celebrities in there as well. And the players are always welcome to it was a real
It was great, wasn't it?
family sort of club, you know.
It was a
and
really
everyone was
good
comfortable
atmosphere.
around everyone. There was no,
no egos.
no egos. That's a good word, Barry. No egos.
No egos.
Now, I think
was
that's why the club was so successful through that period, because there were no egos from the players to the coaches to the board members to the chairman to the sponsors. I mean, some great sponsors have been
Well, we
involved
missed
in the
that
club.
period where the importance of Red Hill, that clubhouse, was to
The success of the
gluing
organisation.
everyone
Yeah.
together. Like the players would go, then after the game, everyone, it was all compulsory, had to come back. We had presentations, sponsors were there, fans, supporters were welcome.
Yep.
And it was a really good place where we could go back and celebrate or commiserate.
Yep.
You know, but it was important to glue. So I wonder today, like, you know, how did they celebrate yesterday? Do they everyone just goes home, or
There's no,
you know?
there's no back. That doesn't happen anymore for different reasons, you know.
Yeah.
Which is a bit sad, but I guess
But
things evolve.
That's the problem with professionalism. You know, I did 3 years with Man United. And same with these American, NFL teams. We were there for the 2 Super Bowls that the Denver Broncos won, and what we couldn't sort of accommodate in our minds was the fact that after they won a Super Bowl, like first time Denver Bronco had won the Super Bowl, I think it was 98, 99, and Michael was there, and he was saying, there's Pat and there's Mike Shanahan, the coach, and no one's speaking. He said, why don't you get Pat to actually talk to them. And they were all in little alcoves because none of them knew really one another.
Right.
They all came from various parts of the states. And there was just nothing, and they'd won their first Super Bowl. You know, imagine we'd won our first in '92. We'd won our first, and it was just the whole of Brisbane and everything went nuts.
Yeah,
and yet down there, they were all in alcoves, and I can remember Michael coming to me saying, "Dad, go and tell Pat to give a speech or say something." And he scarcely. I think eventually he got up and said something, but by that stage it just had no substance to it. It was just different. That's what professionalism, I think, does. It sort of drags that sort of aspect
definitely
outside the realm of just that lovely
bringing people
relationship.
together.
Kev, you would have known as a player then how important that was there.
Well, you knew
gluing
sponsors.
everybody together.
You knew you guys well. Comfortable enough to go and see you guys and talk about whatever the game or your business and whatever's happening. So yeah, hugely important. Righto, we're coming to the end here now. So how did it all end? Like as far as your ownership goes, because Super League had somewhat to do with that, and News Limited came in and bought you guys out. Is that how it worked?
Yes, News Limited ended up buying us out. That was in '97.
So 97.
So,
97?
Were you happy to move on, or you wanted?
It
It
wasn't
was
97.
'97 for the '98 season.
Yeah. I
so
was
it
in
happened.
London. I was
98
with the
was the
London
first-
Broncos,
First year
and
they
it was
came
the
back
time I
together.
mentioned to you about.
Yeah, we'll get to that story in a
Yeah,
minute.
but I mean that was the year of the
Super League.
London
What year
Broncos.
did Super League start?
97 Super League,
Okay. It was before that, yeah. So
Yeah.
it might have been 96.
and you all left.
Yeah.
it.
No, Super
yeah.
League started '95.
Hmm?
Super League
Well,
started '95.
the
Oh, well,
idea.
if it was 95, well, then we were finished by Super League.
Yeah, but '97. Yes,
97,
yes.
yeah.
We'd sold by that stage,
Yeah.
and I was in London, so I wasn't part of it. But I think you might have been, Ross, where one of the Morgans guys started to put the whole thing together. And News Limited, by that stage, we'd been very strong backers of News Limited. Lachlan Murdoch was very conscious of what we could offer, and Ken Cowley was, very positive as well.
Yeah.
So there was a move towards, and we backed News Limited when the Super League busted, and it was Kerry Packer and Rupert Murdoch, two of the biggest media people in the world, wanted rugby league, and we went with Rupert, we went with News Limited, and as I may have mentioned to someone, that halfway through that, when things got a bit tight, Packer contacted Porky and myself and said, "I'll give you $5 million if you jump from News Limited to us," and that was 95. And we had made up, our word was our bond. I mean, we couldn't live any other, none of us could live with one another, because I remember mentioning it to the others, and without a hesitation, Steve and Gary just said, no, we gave our word, we're with News.
Yep.
Now, as that evolved, and it got very ugly, as you know, 90 million was spent in legals.
Yeah.
90 million. So it was very ugly, but then eventually News Limited came out of it unscathed, and that's when the next step.
Was that $5 million each? I might just review.
Someone said 130 houses we could have bought in Brisbane. 4 of us could have owned nearly 30 houses each.
Can we review that again?
Oh, it's gone. Those days are gone.
But anyway, it is what it is.
Now we'll get to your post because you moved on to the London Broncos. Well, let's do that now, and then we'll finish.
Sure.
So you moved on to the London Broncos, Barry. And
Yeah. I didn't like the Super League thing. I didn't like what was. I liked the concept, of course. We were party to the concept. What had happened was we played Wigan in '93 or '94 at ANZ.
Yeah, for the World Club Challenge.
Yeah, and they beat us.
They
of
did
all
beat
things,
us.
and it was the 1st of July. It was the most beautiful night, and Ken Cowley and the news guys were up. And it was just a wonderful night, even though we got beaten. And I'll never forget, Cowley said to us, "Why don't we play Wigan and these more often?" And Arthurson and Quayle were in the group, and they said, "Well, this is the reason. These blokes won't let us."
Mm.
And the seeds, I think, were sown there, and I think that's when John Rebo sort of had some thought, and whether Porky did or not, I don't know. But the idea of the Super League war was Super League was another thing, and it had all the essence of it. And I'd lived through 2 of them. I lived through World Series cricket, and just to give you an idea, World Series cricket started in January of '97, and we signed up something like 70 players from around the world, and no one knew a thing about it until May. So you can imagine we signed West Indies, South Africa, Pakistan, India, England. And no one found out, and it was an accident that they found out. Greg Chappell rang me from Sussex and said, "Listen, the shit's hit the fan. There's a story coming out that we've done this World Series cricket with Kerry Packer, and it was dramatic. I mean, you could imagine all the world almost came to an end, and all sorts of things happened. We don't want to talk about it, but that was the silence from that. And then when I was involved with the Rebel tour to South Africa in the 80s, we did all that signing. It was all done. In my next room was Greg Chappell. Greg was the chairman of the Australian selectors, and I was just helping the South Africans and Bruce Francis in putting this together. And the word was getting around that something was happening, but no one knew. It was all done so quietly. And then, of course, it happened, and what happened after that is another thing. But with Wills, when we started the Super League, I'll never forget it. We were playing the Crushers at ANZ. No, we were playing at ANZ. It was a Friday night, and there was a meeting set up on the Saturday with the Broncos and Canterbury. Peter Moore was coming up, and there was a movement, and we'd heard about it. I wasn't, I was as involved as anyone, so I'm not denying, but I wasn't necessarily engaged. Out of nowhere, at halftime, Steve Ricketts came to me at halftime and said, "Barry, what do you know about this meeting tomorrow with Canterbury?" And I just about died, because I'm thinking, how does Ricketts know? Oh. And of course, we had only just conjured it up, and at that stage, we'd gone months without anyone knowing anything, and next thing, the word got out, and it just got terrible. And it was blind Freddie could see that we're in trouble. And worse still, our guarantees were on, and I'd been through 2 legal systems. After World Series cricket, the legal side was a mess. Packers in the High Court in England, it was just dreadful. And then, of course, the one with the international tour to South Africa, that blew up in all sorts of ways. So all I knew was that this is going to be a disaster, and we've got guarantees involved. If they ended up suing the Broncos, we were all in trouble.
You're all in trouble. There goes those 30 houses.
So I used to say, when I'd go to meetings...
130.
There was Paul and John, and I just said, look, I don't want any board meeting discussions about this Super League. If you're going to have the discussions, by all means do so. But it's not a board meeting, because I wanted to make sure that we could go to a court, because it was obvious going to be in court. It wasn't obvious we were going to spend 90 million, by the way, but it was obvious this was going to be in court. What I didn't want is the Broncos then being caught up in it. You know? But Ken Arthurson, of course, next thing, there's headlines every day. There was a paper story about Super League, and Arco would ring me up and say, "Barry, what's going on?" And I'd say, "Look, Paul's been quoted, but Paul was the chairman of Northern Rivers."
Northern Rivers, yeah.
And they own
Limited,
20% share of the Broncos. Company. I said, Paul is the chairman of that company. He's entitled to say whatever he likes. So, but it's not the Broncos. The Broncos do not discuss this. The Broncos are not involved. So I wanted that placed on the record. And in fact, I was the second cab off the rank in court, in this massive court procedure, where I could go in and just
hold your head
swear
high.
that we never discussed it in the Broncos. We got beaten the first time, but we lost the first case, and then the Murdoch appealed, and we won the second one. But that was hairy at that time, because the last thing you do is to go out and advertise something before you've got it really locked up. You know? Yeah. But anyway, it was the best thing that's happened to rugby league.
Yeah, but then you went to the London Broncos. You've got a great story about your London Broncos times as well.
Well, I went over because, frankly, I just didn't want to be around with what I saw in '95 was just ugly, and
So you sold out?
I didn't. I didn't sell. I just went over there.
Well,
we'd already had a team. Rebo and Wayne Bennett had a team set up there with Grenke was the coach and a number of players.
At the London Broncos.
Yeah, it was called the Crusaders in those days.
Oh, okay.
You might remember Strutty had them. So I went over there in '95. I just wanted to get out of the place. There were a number of reasons. The economy of Australia was down the gurgler. So a lot of reasons. But I went over there and started with the London Broncos, and that's where we started something new.
Yeah.
And we brought a lot of the players because they played in winter. We could bring players over there too.
Yeah, because Terry played there. Terry Madison.
He was captain. Yeah, he was captain.
Mark Hone was there as well.
Mark went over. No, not Mark, but Gavin Allen.
Gavin Allen,
Gavin Allen came over. A great story. And what had happened, I had the newspapers. Unfortunately, We got dudded financially. That's another issue. News Limited promised a certain. I said I'll go over on a certain amount of money, and Maurice Lindsay, the head of the English Rugby League, said every team that signs for the Super League over there would get £1.5 million. I'd get £400,000 from News Limited, so I had 1 point. So my budget was I had 1.9. Ross came over at one stage. That's another story. But the point I'm getting at is we had certain funds. And then when we got over there, Morris did his usual trick and said, oh, but that 1.5, it's really 1.2.
What? Oh.
Well, I can't pack up and go back to Australia. By that stage, I've got the players. And I'm competing to get players over there. And Cyril Connell and Michael O'Connor were very good in terms of directing me with certain players. And Tolson Tullard, do you remember?
Yeah, he's Tolson, yeah.
He came
Parramatta.
from Parramatta and beat us when we played the...
Yeah.
Anyway, I brought him over there. And anyway, the fact of the matter is that's how the game got underway. And eventually we did what we did here, and that is we had entertainment. So any band coming to London heard that the London Broncos were there, so they'd play. So we had bands, we had music, and the crowd, we will crowd from 1,500, and we were getting 9,500, which filled the stoop. That's all the ground could hold. But I remember Ross coming over and staying at my place at Knightsbridge, and I said to Ross, crying on his shoulder, I said, mate, these buggers don't pay. And News Limited promised the money, but then Ken Cowley retired, and Sam Chisholm was the head of B Sky B. And Sam Chisholm just wouldn't pay. I was due for $400,000 every week. So it was a bit of a problem on the financial side.
I can imagine that.
So that was ugly, and we tried to argue our case but didn't get very far. Ross was there, and I said, Ross, these buggers won't pay. And I said, I can't get, Lindsay won't call back. Sam Chisholm won't call me back. And Ross just said, we'll pack up and go back to Australia. Well, I've got all these players and the whole lot. And I don't know whether you were there when I rang, but whether you left.
Was.
Yeah. Anyway, I've rung up.
Oh, as you rang.
I've rung Maurice Lindsay, and the girl said, oh, yeah, Mr. Moretti, yeah, I'll get him to ring you back, with this northern accent. And I said, well, don't tell him not to worry, I'm on a plane back to Australia. There's no London Broncos. So I put the phone down. Next thing the phone goes, what are you doing? What's going on? And I said, well, mate, at the moment we start paying some money, then everything's going to get a lot better. So I then rang Sam Chisholm, did the same thing. Sam, his girl, said, oh, look, I'll get him to call you back, which I'd heard of. And I said, well, tell him not to worry. There's no London Broncos, so there's nothing going on. And anyway, Sam rang back, promised the world, I've got you for this, I've got you that. Stupidly, I didn't put it in writing, and that was something.
They never paid, right?
No, but that's another story. But coming on to it, Richard Branson, because of the music that we had, Richard had a number of Australians working for him, young, good-looking girls and guys and everything else, and he surrounded himself with those sorts of people. He'd retired, sold out his Virgin Records for £1.5 billion, so he was going all right. And when he'd come back from the farm at his property on the weekend, the staff said to him, look, pop into the stoop and come to the game. So he came along, and the music was the thing that got him. He just loved the music. And then eventually he started to like the game, and then he started to like the involvement with people. And eventually he said, I said, would you like to join the board? He said, I'd love to join the board. So he came on board, and we had a wonderful relationship for about 18 months. And the reason that it came to an end was the fact that in the last weekend in 1997, we were playing the biggest game of the year. Bradford Bulls came down to London to play London Broncos. Bradford Bulls were one, we were number 2. So this was virtually like yesterday's game. It was the knockout or the last game of the season. So this was a game that I'd sold out by Wednesday. We'd sold the whole stadium out. So for Basil was going to get some money. So I was thinking, oh, thank God for that. So Sunday morning wakes up, and all I'm thinking about is this game, everything else.
Big crowd,
the whole lot. Richard Branson had called me to come over to his place in Holland Park, so I went over, and he wanted to. You got Martin Afire playing, haven't you? Got Martin Afire? And I said, oh well, I'll talk to Tony Curry, who was our coach. I said, well, we're a bit concerned about his defence. His attack's fantastic, and I was just talking. No, you've got to pay him. He's the 5th handsomest man, the fifth handsomest man in Europe. And he Richard had this modelling bloody agency or something, for somehow Martin Afire was somehow, and that's why he wanted him on the wing. And I kept thinking, well, I'm not sure that's the right thing. But anyway, be that as it may, Sunday morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call, and it's my wife back in Australia. I've got a 6 o'clock. Yeah, I just want to let you know that Princess Di's been killed.
Yeah.
And I just said, Lynn, I have the biggest game of the year. It's 6 o'clock in the morning, and you want to tell me you want to have a chat about Princess Di.
Oh.
She said, no, he was killed by paparazzi. Yeah.
Barry.
She said, all sport in England has been cancelled. And I think I went down for the count.
Did you?
I think I got up on the 8 count, but that was about it. What? And of course, it was the first day of soccer, the first day of rugby union. They could cancel the first day because they could find days to make up. Well, this is the last day.
Mm.
So if I don't play on the Sunday, I play on the Wednesday, I get
Half the crowd.
I get 1/3 of the crowd.
1/3, not less.
And Baz has gone again. So so I rang Richard, and to his credit, I didn't want to tell him it was a financial desperation, but I just said, look, would you see what you can do? The Home Secretary was Jack Straw, and Richard knew them all. And Tony Blair, he knew the whole lot. So I said, look, we've just got to have this game. It's this and it's that. And whatever argument I used, it must have been working, because he then said, look, just hang on for a while. And then he came back and said, it's going to take a couple of hours, but they're going to get to see what they can do. And then I can never forget, it was about 11 o'clock, and then I'm worried about the buses coming down from Bradford, because they've got to get down here for a 6 o'clock game. So I'm on edge from the time, and it was just ugly. The whole thing was ugly, a bad day. And I really was crying for Princess Di, so don't get me wrong.
No.
But the point I'm getting at is that he's then rang me back and said, we can play, but with no bands, no music. And he said, I promised that I would give an obituary. Now, you've got to understand, in England, no one, all the palaces just closed down. No one said anything, because there was this feeling about Princess Di was going to be engaged or married to Dodi, the Al Fayed's son. And my Pommy cricket mates were telling me that they didn't want a non-Brit as being the father of the future king. So, I mean, things that Aussies didn't even think about. But the whole of the palaces, just not a word about this death. But the word got out that Richard Branson was going to say something. So other networks contacted Sky B and said, could we come in, ITV and BBC, and the others came in, where they could actually get someone to say something about Princess Diana. Richard isn't the most articulate person, but he gave the most wonderful eulogy anyone could ever give. We all had to march, as only the English can do. We all had to, the chairman of Bradford and the team, and you talk, and then Tony Curry and me in front of Tony Curry and the team, and we all had to march out in the centre. And Richard he read out a letter that Richard and his wife had been in a car accident, coming back from their property, in fact. And while they were in hospital, she'd written a letter to them.
Lady Di had.
Lady Di. So he read out the letter.
Right.
And it was so dramatic. And then he said, wouldn't it be great if we could write that letter?
Mm.
The crowd went nuts. And that was it. I mean, it was just, and of
amazing.
course, would you believe, guess who scores the try in the last 5 minutes?
Martin Afire.
Martin Afire.
There you go.
So he's
Gary.
raced into
Fourth
me.
handsomest bloke in the
He can still score tries.
Raced in, gave me a whack and said, and he went off from the football ground at Stoop to various networks, because they wanted to interview him
about his day.
Even though it was 10 o'clock at night, or 9:30 at night. Anyway, then 2 days later he said, why don't I buy the team? So there was
music to your ears, Barry.
So where's my inheritance?
Yes. Oh, that's coming. Right. That's a great story, Barry, and one that's probably never been told
It's
before.
never been told before, because I just, and that was why I enjoyed this whole exercise. As an old historian, you probably don't know, but I started off as a historian. Historians are interested in primary sources. Primary sources are the first people engaged.
Yes.
Then you have secondary and tertiary. And it's something that we've all picked up, but I could go to a lunch now and then, given that I wrote history textbooks, I wrote 7 history texts, so I was really into that, doing my PhD and stuff. So that's where I started as an academic, and that's probably been one of my handicaps, but be that as it may, that's where it started. But what amused me is being so fixated about primary source material as a historian. And then I'd go to a lunch, and then someone would get up and say, and here's so-and-so, he was the one that named the Brisbane Broncos. And everyone would crowd, and I'd think, who is that guy?
He didn't do that.
And the classic, of course, was Senator McAuliffe, Ron McAuliffe. When I put the proposal, we did the first State of Origin back in
1980.
79 in Subiaco Oval. Leon Larkin was he was part of our international sports management team. He did the first one over there, and it was such a booming success. I picked it up and brought it to McAuliffe. With Bill Mutton was the secretary then, and Bill's a friend of ours. And I said, Bill, this is going to be terrific for Queensland, because we got sick of getting beaten by New South Wales. At that stage, it was terrible. And so I'd put Billy Mutton had it all sorted out for me. I went in to see McAuliffe and said, look, this is what we could do. We could bring in, and I rattled off all the players that were playing for New South Wales. I was all pumped up, and he just said, Mickey Mouse.
Not going to work.
Mickey Mouse. That is a Mickey Mouse game. And I said, well, can't we do it? Anyway, the fortunate part was my partner, Wayne Reid, he started after the 97 Olympic Games when we didn't win a gold medal. He got to the Prime Minister Fraser and started the Confederation of Sport, where every sport was brought to Canberra, and we were going to do something. Started then the Institute of Sport.
Oh, okay.
So Wayne did all that. Wayne was just fantastic. And anyway, he got all that started. I rang Wayne up, crying and say, Wayne, you won't believe it, I can't even get to first base with this bloke. And fortunately, Kevin Humphreys was the rugby league guy in the Confederation of Sport, and he was really good. And he got involved with Wayne and myself, and he pressured some of the New South Wales members, and they said, all right, up in 1980, we'd lost the first two, and they said, well, you can play the third, and it was and you can have State of Origin for the third, but McAuliffe said, no, it's a Mickey Mouse game. And of course, it was a knockout.
Huge game.
And within a year, he's the father of
State of Origin.
The State of Origin. So all I'm saying is these primary sources, at least what we've got here today, is the primary
source. Genuine primary source.
Primary.
Now let's talk about a couple of your mates aren't here. Steve, we'll go back to you. A couple of your mates aren't here, that original owners.
Yeah.
Paul Morgan and Gary. What's your memories of those two gentlemen there? And we'll start with Gary first, and then we'll do Porky second.
Gaz was a fantastic guy, an entrepreneur. People don't probably recognise that he had one of the leading restaurants. He had Kookaburra Queen. He did the Melbourne Hotel back in I think about the 70s. You know,
he played himself, Gary. Didn't he?
He played on the wing for South, and he was
and brothers.
He was a great guy. Had a lovely family. Lola, his wife, and two kids. They lived across the road from me at the time, and they were. He was a bit eccentric, could be a little bit vague. A lot of fun. Loved to drink. Loved socialising. Was a good writer.
He was an entertainer, wasn't he?
Good writer.
Very good writer.
Very good writer. He had his own column, and and he was a great partner. He was terrific. And,
because all four of you bought different.
Yeah, we all had different. And then Paul was robust. He was he could be aggressive, could be he was a bit up and down, but he had charisma. He had he could do anything. Paul, like he Ross knew him better than probably most of us, but I remember he could be terrific one minute and he could be a bit agitated the next. But he was very successful in what he did. He floated Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah,
he did that. So that's
what put him on the map. Basically,
put him on the map. Yeah. And then Power Brewing sort of cemented that, and then Morgan Stockbroking, which today is probably one of Queensland's leading stockbroking firms. Is that fair?
It's
comment?
a retail stockbroking firm.
Yeah. But you guys knew him better than I only met him. I met him socially at the Gabba at a Christmas function. Tony Dell. I was working for Tony, so I met Paul, and we had a bit of a common link there with Redcliffe. We both played for Redcliffe, and knew Dick Turner and stuff like that. And so then, and that wasn't that long after, where I rang him and said, we got this thing going, do you want to be part of the Broncos? And
bang, he's straight
so
on
he
it.
was there. So I don't know. I mean, Ross would be better to talk about Paul than I would, but I certainly loved him. I mean, most of us loved him.
Yeah.
But, you know, he could be up and down.
He could be up and down. Well,
You know?
the Broncos have been up and down.
Yeah.
From me personally, from you guys giving me the opportunity to play for the Broncos and the club it is today, we're all indebted to you four men in particular for the groundwork, the pioneers as such, if you call them, Barry, of this great club. And you must look back on the club with nothing but great memories. Sure, there's been a few little ups and downs, but surely.
But we were fortunate that we got a Cyril Connell, we got a a Shane Edwards. We just had
so
really
many good
terrific
people.
really
Sponsors,
good, and to be quite honest, without peeing in your pocket, I mean, the Walters from Ipswich, the Langers, they were just great families. Andrew and Brett.
Never got Stevie there, but the other two.
Stevie was he
was a Raider man.
He was in different, but I mean, just wonderful families, and we could go to a game, and there were the families there, and I, perhaps being a little sentimental, but I thought that was a critical aspect of what we were. You know, we looked upon people more than just he's a footballer. I mean, we used to try and get jobs for people. We used to, through the thoroughbreds, we actually found, tasks so we could do the post-football, careers. So it was just that type of organisation. And as I said, we all left our egos in the car park and we just went about doing one. And fellows like Rebo, just wonderful people. We were just... I think we were rather blessed. Cyril Connell, how good was Cyril?
Yeah, recruiting-wise, none better.
But you couldn't find a better person. Like, these just weren't talented. They were just wonderful people. So we've been blessed.
Well, it's interesting when you go to the game I went to yesterday and you feel a little bit awestruck by that. You think, gee, I had something to do with this. When you see 54 or 50, whatever
52,000,
and I would say at least 60% of them had a jersey on. Had a Bronco jersey. I mean, mind you, the other 40% had some other, they're all Broncos. So like there was 95% Bronco supporters there. So it was just amazing. It was fantastic.
And that's what you guys created.
And the wonderful song about Let's Go Broncos was really pinched from the New York Jets when they won the World Series.
There you go.
It was Let's Go Mets Go, and we picked it up and changed it. Did you do the wording of it or the singing of it?
Yeah.
And all I worried about is when we sold the Broncos, we thought, God, if the Mets baseball team picked up and sued the persons, we could have been liable. But we just pinched that. Every time you hear it, everyone else hears "Let's Go Broncos." I hear "Let's Go Mets Go." So,
well, I'm going to say "Let's Go Broncos."
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm going to have to wind you fellas up. We've run out of time, unfortunately. But thank you so much to the both of you for coming on the Inside Ball. We're all indebted to your future sites that you saw way back in 1987. Great insight into the Broncos and how the club was formed, and the success in the early days was obviously really important, and you guys got it right. So
thank you.
Hats off to you.
Thank you very much.
You gentlemen.
Thank you.
Well done. Let's go Broncos.
Let's go.
Well,
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website